So yeah, tonight is our 10-year birthday party, so I thought I'd do a few poems as well, if that's all right. I'm going to start off with this one really, which is, I guess in a way it's kind of a response to our current reptilian overlords and their attempt to dispel a little thing called the Human Rights Act, which was actually written by British lawyers kind of post-World War II as almost a kind of a contract of everyone's kind of basic rights and freedoms. And we did an event as part of Festival of Debate, kind of the first Festival of Debate was about a year and a half ago now, with a charity that was kind of doing a campaigning for the Human Rights Act and trying to make it something that people valued and would have a response against repealing it. So I kind of wrote a poem about it for that event, and I guess I tried to approach it from a much more kind of personal way of kind of thinking about what kind of contract you'd want to exist between you and someone you'd never met. And it's called Dear Stranger. Dear strangers, I see you everywhere, buying bottles of wine in supermarkets, on buses to work, on billboards and TV screens and train stations at dark. But the truth for almost all of us is, we will never meet. I'll never match your name with a memory of us talking nonsense, finding fun with the way we cross words and put worlds back together again, the way the closest friends can mend. And I'm worried about the words we might find hanging on our features, because it can be too easy to strap too much attention to the act of recognizing each other in terms of difference. I do think about you despite the fact I'll never be there. I'll never be the one you text at 1 a.m. I'll never walk past you in the street. We may live our entire lives, continents apart. But we could start with the small things. I'd always want you to be free. I'd always want you to follow that dull ache in your chest that could make you feel home. And if you needed help, but were afraid to ask for it, let me reassure you, if it was mine to give, I'd want to give it freely, without hesitation, without the cluster of fear that can mark our daily interactions, without the expectation of anything in return. And if you ask me about breaking, I'd tell you to break gloriously, shatter into a cloud of glitter and dust, till you wonder how you can be so of this world, yet sick of its lessons. Dear strangers, I hope one day you will find me and you won't think I am too different to understand that you exist. And we will meet in public places, discuss how to love, and know how to take chances, especially on days like this. Cheers. Thank you. So this next one is kind of about the Peak District, actually. I guess it kind of starts on a Sunday morning where you might have had a kind of more hedonistic weekend. And I know it's the same for a lot of people that live in Sheffield. The Peaks, we're lucky enough to have the Peaks as kind of our playground, somewhere that we can go to kind of rejuvenate ourselves and, kind of get some space that everyone needs, especially when you live in a city where you're surrounded by thousands of people. It's so nice to go out there and kind of just go for a long walk. And this is a poem that's kind of an attempt, I guess, to kind of capture that feeling. And it's called True Grit. There are days where I didn't know where I was going. Took the waterproof hung behind the cellar door, cut ham sandwiches, counted the change in my pocket and closed the front door. It isn't always clear what you look for, but you always know what you found. Sometimes you have to escape the city and return to finding your steps on old rocks across the moor. Return to your feet. Return to recognize your shadow out of the sun, then imagine how ice once split rocks as big as houses down Mam Tor. Return to feeling ancient. Return to feeling newborn. Return to not holding each of your responsibilities in your fingertips and let them drip through your hands like rain. Return to not doubting yourself. There is nothing greater or smaller to compare yourself with than Mother Cap or the payslip you try to ignore each month. Forget the illusions you dress yourselves with. Leave them at door. Because from here, you can summon the best parts of yourself. Feel its grit, its real, the same way you feel the sun in your palms or your heart pulsing in your head. Return to the peaks to discover which part of yourself you haven't been listening to, and then forgive yourself for it. But only return if you mean it. Only return if it's your truth, if the words come tumbling out of your throat, because for the first time in a long time, you listened to yourself thinking, and it felt true. Cheers. I'm just going to finish on this one. It's a fairly old poem that I've been following for a while, but I don't know, it's one that almost feels more necessary the longer kind of politics and news and such goes on. I don't know about you, but you know, every time you turn on the TV, open a newspaper, turn on the radio, you're just kind of faced with these unrelentingly waves of bad news that's kind of questionable and sometimes quite hard to understand or believe. And I kind of wrote a poem, I guess, as almost attempting to be an anecdote, the antidote to that, which is, you know, all of these kind of macro things that happen around us don't really reflect the day-to-day reality of all of our lives. And I wrote a poem about that, and it's called The Good News Brigade. You don't need a newscaster to tell you which way the news goes. And while politics is global, the best news is local. Miracles do happen every day. A Year 9 boy called Luke writes a poem about how he doesn't like his friends calling the girls hoes at school. He'd like to spray them with a hose and then break their nose. Someone tells him poems don't have to rhyme, his eyes sparkle, and he fills his notebook within a matter of minutes. A roadside bomb explodes early, and instead of refreshing news bulletins like it's a ball hand grenade, a wife chats to her man on Skype and tells him their son has a cold. A white van slows to peep a group of women slowly walking home from work and crashes into a bollard. As the driver waits for the AA, he is mooned by a passing all-female saga coach train. A train reaches its destination on time. A single father picks up his son from school. A man wakes up one day and all before breakfast packs up his flat, cancels the bills and books a flight to Canada and breaks out his first real smile in 2 years. Someone else misses their flight and meets the most beautiful stranger they've ever seen in the bookings queue and takes them out for dinner and a movie. And of course, there is as much darkness as light, if not more, but there are good days too, when the sun sparks the dust at our feet and smiles in the eyes of a loved one who is pleasantly surprised we've made it back from work early for once. You don't need the newscaster to tell you which way the world goes. All you need is to close your eyes and listen to the city talking itself to sleep. Cheers.